Hey everybody, welcome to Sunday Sessions with Courtenay Pollock. Hey Courtenay.
Hi Heidi.
So we want to hear a little bit about the backdrop behind us. I was totally entranced by the center of it. It's really hard to see here. If you zoom in, you can see there's like a little face there, but Courtenay, tell me a little bit about this backdrop.
Well, you saw a little bear and it does look like a bear with the ears and everything right in the very center.
Yeah.
But there was something, I had seen a Tibetan tanka that was all skulls, and it reminded me, I don't know if it was a mandala, yeah, so it was, circular with all of these skulls in this kind of ringed array. And so I named it the Tibetan skull factor. It's not going to ring bells for a lot of people, but it did for me at the time when I did it. This isn't a new piece. This was it's several years old. I made this. I loved it. It's a big sheet. I've got it kind of. It's a little too big for the room. It's a little too high. I had to fold it back a bit. Anyway, we have a local a cinema here. It's the longest running cinema in Canada.
The Patricia Theatre.
The Patricia Theatre,
yeah.
Run by this lady, Ann Nelson.
Yeah.
And Ann Nelson also put on an annual Arts in the Park down at Willingdon Park, which is on the waterfront there. It's our sandy beach that we have in town. And she asked if she could use one of my mandalas as backdrop for the band shell, and which is a beautiful band shell. It was developed by the Rotary Club, mm-hmm. And so I lent them this one because it was a bit bigger than most of them. It's like a king size sheet. Anyway, at the end of the weekend festival, I didn't get my mandala back, so I went to I regularly go to the theater for the new movies, and she would run the box office, take the money in, and I mean, the longest running theater in Canada, and it's a beautiful theater.
Yeah,
it's
gorgeous.
It's gorgeous, and it's all painted inside like kind of Maxfield Parrish kind of style murals all around, and with gilt edge and all this stuff. And then they bought a whole theater's worth of Empire red velvet seats when one of the great theaters down in Vancouver closed. So it's really authentic, interior. It's a beautiful job. Anyway, just recently, so I lent it, and I said to her, and I said, I didn't get the mandala back. She said, oh, yes, you did. It went to an assistant. I said, well, I didn't see it. So I said, can you tell me who it was? She said, oh, I can't remember right now, but, we'll get to it at another time. Well, that other time never came, and here we are. It's at least 5 years since that event. And I had, just last week, I had a email from her. I have moved out of the theatre and got a little apartment, because she used to live in the theatre in an apartment over the theatre, and my assistant is returning all of the articles that I had used for different events, and your mandala showed up. In other words, she had it in her possession all the time. She just didn't know. So it's been fun. I've written it off totally.
Oh, wow.
I went, well, that's, you win some, you lose some. These people got to enjoy it. Anyway, I picked it up, a week or two ago. So here it is. It's a Tibetan skull factor. So that was that one. And of course, it's a fall colors, so
Definitely suits the mood.
it suits the mood.
Yes.
Yeah, skulls and all.
All right, well, let's move on and carry on from last time. Sound
Right.
good? All right. Enjoy,
Right.
guys.
Thank you. Move on from where? Okay, I was talking about the horses. We were, I was like, I went off on a horse trip. And, you know, love the horse life. Oh my gosh, you know, and it was beautiful. You can't recapture those, especially later in life. You don't have the athleticism necessarily, the flexibility, unless you really keep it up. But even so, you know, your body ages. Doesn't matter how well you keep it and exercise it and feed it and all that stuff and pamper it, hopefully. You know, nobody gets out of here alive. You know, and that's an unfortunate consequence of living. Well, anyway, I'm still having fun. But you know, last time I rode, man, I ached all day. The next, you know, I ached for about 3 days. We sold the ranch. We sold the farm, and bought the a little equestrian ranch in Ashland, Oregon, and so we had that leasehold for 6 months of glorious summer in Tumalo, in Central Oregon, and now the farm sold, and Jewel, she's great at packing and organizing. I said, well, okay. We found this place in Ashland, Oregon. It was pretty run down at the time. I was like, I don't want to have to do a fixer-upper. Well, I got it. I bought it. It was a great deal, really. It's a smaller acreage, but it had flowing water top of the property and bottom of the property. It was up at a higher elevation above town, but not too far from town. No more than about 12 minutes to the center, to the great restaurants. And because Ashland is the last town in Oregon before the California border, and our property actually looked across to the freeway where it went up over the pass and then down into California, and then you see Mount Shasta, you know, and really lovely location. And it was also it was minutes away from the ski slopes. They had a small ski facility there in the bordering hills, of which, you know, my property was, you know, a little further down than the slopes of this. But so what it occasioned was that in the summer, when it would be 118 degrees in the valley, absolutely unbearably hot, we would be up above. We'd be 20 plus degrees cooler. We'd be up in like maybe 90, which is bearable. It's still hot, but it's not 118, you know? So we're up there, and the horses are comfortable. They're in the shade of the barn. We've got the water, top and bottom, and we've got ponds, and all our gardens, you know, just everything's thriving. I had turned part of the barn into a grow facility, and it was kind of shielded by haystacks, you know, for the horses' hay. We had just like a wall of bales. Then there was this little secret entrance, and you go in, there's a whole other wonderland in there. I had a 9-light operation, well, 9 bloom lights, and I think 3 or 4 grow lights. Pretty good size, you know. We were bringing out, you know, 15, 20 pounds every 2 months, and you know, at 4,500, I still managed to keep my market from the California days, because they went to friends who would disperse it to the various film groups or music groups, and I just had to produce it and transport it, and eventually, of course, I got somebody else to do the transportation, so I wasn't running that risk. But I did like to drive down to California and visit with my friends, and go out to great restaurants, and get my wage back. It was like 60, 80,000 at a time. Cashola is like blocks of money. I don't know if I've mentioned this before, but counting money is like, it takes some time, and you've got to make sure that it's not counterfeit. There's a lot of counterfeiting going on, especially $100 bills, of course. So you count them, and you got to get to recognize by the color, the feel, even the smell, of if you get a block of counterfeits, you know. Well, it only happened to me a few times, and I got them returned, you know, and got real money. But counting takes time, and you know it's a part of the business. You know, you count $100,000, it takes a while, and you got to be really careful what you're doing. Well, one of the things that Canadians probably don't know, and actually most people in the United States don't know either, is that down in the States, a dollar bill, $10, $20, $50, $100, $1,000, they're all the same size bills. They're all green, and they're just different denomination, but they're all weigh 1 gram each, exactly. Who knew? So I get my payment. I said, I just throw it on the scale, would you? I said, oh yeah, there we go. So a kilo, of course, is 1,000 grams. So that's 1,000. There's 1,000 notes. You know, if they're $100 bills, that's 100,000. So you know, oh, kilo, yeah, 100,000. just weigh my money up. Of course, I count it carefully at least once, but not twice. I used to count everything twice, and then I really make sure my count was right. You know, nothing's phony, and everything looks good, and everything. And then my double count, we just throw it on the scale. I know it sounds really decadent, you know, all that. It'd be a bit kind of fun, you know. But anyway, so things are going well down in Ashland, and I you know saved money, of course, and bought another property and had another operation going, and had a couple of leaseholds, and one out on the Oregon coast, which is a lovely place. It didn't make much money, but it covered itself. Because I was gone most of the time, you know, I'd go once a week. I'd drive. It's a long drive because you have to drive down to the pass, just above Medford, go to the coast, and then drive all the way up the coast road to get to this little town. And it was beautiful. And but we had a place in the Applegate Valley. Well, Jacksonville in the Applegate Valley used to be the capital of Oregon. Can you believe it? Some long time ago, of course, but in the early days, Jacksonville, when it was cowboy time, you know, it was the capital, and it's beautiful. The Applegate Valley is so called because it was all apple orchards. Well, now it's all vineyards. And I tried to buy a vineyard there. You know, I've always fancied a vineyard. You know, I have a taste for good wines. And it wasn't a winery. It didn't make it. It didn't, you know, process its own grapes. But it grew really good grapes. It wasn't big. It wasn't a massive place. I think it was only about 25 acres of actual grape. But that's a lot of money of grape. And they had contracts with Simi Valley wineries, which were pretty good, upscale. You know, it wasn't the greatest, but it was not. It was good. It was up there with most of the big boys. So, I was going to get this. You know, I could buy cash. Well, this old fellow that owned it, I was kind of dealing with his attractive daughter. And she was all excited, you know, that she found a buyer for Dad's vineyard. And I said, well, I'm not going to quibble. I'll give you a full price cash offer. She went, oh, this is great. You know, she was so excited. And then she gets back to me the next day. She said, well, Daddy's not going to go for it. I said, what's not good? You know, it's a full price cash offer, you know? He said, no, he wants to go through a bank and a broker. And I said, well, why would you pay commissions to brokers and go through a bank? And it's like, and he says, well, he's old-fashioned. I said, there's nothing more old-fashioned than cash, surely, you know? Anyway, I couldn't buy it, you know? I couldn't make a better offer. It wasn't, you know, he didn't want it. He didn't want to just get cashed out on this. I said, I don't get it. But she was like so disappointed because she was going to make a little commission, I think. Anyway, that didn't happen, which was really disappointing to me because I wanted to turn my growing into a grape growing, and have, an Applegate Valley. It's beautiful. It's a beautiful, so it should be the grape. It's not, it's the grape gate, not the Applegate. Grape Gate, and with the capital of Jacksonville. Well, also in Jacksonville, right at the center of town, up on its own hillock, is this. It's only an acre and a half, but the house on it, it's so absolutely classic and beautiful. It's like the best of the Victorian, all of the unique scroll work and the architecture, and this house is so big it dwarfed the acre and a half, and I wanted to buy it. It was so I got to look at it, and it had been lovingly renovated by these two gentlemen that every room, everything in there was absolute a class act. Heavy velvet drapes, where there's wallpaper that's like that flocked, kind of velvety wallpaper, and chandeliers, red, hardwood floors, and it was absolutely glorious. And I said, well, how come a gracious house like this ends up in, Jacksonville? Because, it was like, about then it was a boony town, even though it was the capital. And they said, well, this was the top showcase house that they sold in the Sears catalog. It was shipped in.
A prefab house.
Prefabricated and brought in and put together. And it's one of the best made houses I've ever seen. A Sears catalog house. Unbelievable. I think it was like $3,000 when it was put in.
Oh my goodness.
And I was looking at it, this is like, 20 years ago. And it was 1.3 million. Of course, you got the grounds, and but the houses, it dwarfed the acre and a half. The acre and a half was just like this little garden around it. There was no room for horses. It was just a dream. It was certainly a dream house, and but because it didn't have the facility for the animals, horses, breeding, all of the things we were doing, because I just wanted to move, into a totally legitimate enterprises. I wanted to get the vineyard and the beautiful house in Jacksonville, which would make me king of the castle. Not that I want to be king of anything. I just want, except maybe tie-dyeing. Yeah. Anyway, but
you are.
So that went by the board. All our dreams end, but I did have a place that I got, and it was a beautiful place, and it had the wrought iron fencing, the big pillared gates with golden lions on either side, and it was like awesome. It was really nice. It was really upscale, and I got that for a second or a third grow house, which completely lost in the back of the garages. It was like a big 6 or 8 car garage, it was just like an invisible, and that was like the coolest place. Nobody would even think such an upscale place was housing anything that shady. Well, actually it wasn't that shady, it was full of light. Anyway, I laugh about it because I was so much into promoting pot, over anything and everything else as a consciousness raising, and non-lethal. Nobody's died of pot, ever, and so I really promoted it, and the worst day that happened up here in Canada was when they made it legal. God, there's still some really good pot coming. BC pot became, king, best, up here. And it's not the reason I came here, but, it was nice to be in the atmosphere of, people that were really behind, pot and the best pot. And they were growing pot that would knock the socks off what I was producing back in the day when I was, I had developed the indoor grow op, and it was the best around. It was the best in the country, in the States. And that's why I got the big bucks. But so anyway, that when I finally came to BC, there was beautiful hybrids. And but then the worst happened and we had years and years of notice that they were going to, the government was trying to look at a way to legalize it, or decriminalize it, I should say. And it's kind of legal because you're allowed 4 plants, as long as they're, not overseen from a public place. Anyway, where was I? I digressed.
Yes. I think we're almost leading into...
Right. So things are growing great down there in Ashland, and my satellite houses, and I've got some pretty good amount of money invested. I mean, money's coming in. It's getting to be almost like it's a lot of cash all the time. And so some was buried, some was invested. My bills were high because I had properties and all the horses, and always doing, upgrading things. And we didn't go on extravagant holidays because we had animals to look after, so we hardly ever left. So we didn't have, we had a nice truck and trailer for the horses, matching, of course, and we had our own colors for our stables. It was purple and gold were our colors, and for our shows and all this stuff. And we had machinery for the gardens and all this stuff, and but we really didn't have, live high on the hog. We ate out. I mean, one day Jewel would cook, and she's a wonderful cook, and we'd have a lovely dinner and, of course, a bottle of nice wine. My time to cook, we'd go out to dinner, of course, So as I said, we used to trade with all the restaurants around for produce and just bring some nice wines, and that would be my night to cook, of course. So our expenditure, and back then you could have a wonderful meal with great wines for $100 for 2 people. Now, it's double that at least, and you're not going to get as good a meal, and maybe not as good wines. But anyway, things were going great. Well, I heard from this fellow that I knew up in Oregon. I met him actually at Nikki's 50th birthday party, and he looked familiar, and at the time I used to go pump iron at Gold's Gym in Eugene, and I used to see him in there, and he's a big guy. And so we kind of became friends because we were both there every day, pump iron for a couple of hours. And I used to invite him to the farm for high days and holidays. He was a bachelor, and there was a few friends that I used to, even down in California, I'd invite for the fight nights. Heavyweight champion boxing, and make it have a wonderful dinner and some wine and watch the fights. And so this guy was one of the people I'd invite for Thanksgiving and Christmas and things like that. Now, he never saw anything that I was doing, like growing. He didn't ever see any of that. He didn't know where my income was, except that we were doing farmers market and growing all this produce and doing stuff like that. But we had, horses and animals which we were breeding and selling. So, he had no evidence to think that I was, growing. But he'd been a grow-up, which I didn't know. And he was fighting a bust. He was fighting a case, and I didn't know that either. Anyway, we had been down in Ashland, and I hadn't heard from this guy for a while. He'd taken off because his case wasn't going well, apparently, and he'd split. And he called me from New York City. I said, "What are you doing in New York City?" He said, "Oh, I got this going, that going." And I said, "Hey, wait, stop. I don't really want to hear about this stuff, and you're talking on an open line on the phone, which is something I will not do. And you're talking about, and you're a fugitive. This is very uncomfortable for me. You need to, you're obviously, you're overly excited about what you're doing, which leads me to believe that you're using, and you're getting too loud, and you're headed for disaster." Well, sure enough, a couple of weeks later, he got busted, and at the end of everything, he was going to do 4 years or something. It's a lot for growing pot, but at the time they had him for other stuff too. But I can't do for you, what am I going to do? And it's a federal bust. His bust was federal, so it's the feds involved. And they said, "Well, you're only getting 4 man years, that's all we're getting out of you. But if you can give us more man years than that, we'll let you out." Yeah, it's called a proffer. This is what the feds do down there. They run prisons as a business. They make hundreds of billions. They make massive amount of money off all of those poor people that are locked up in prison. Some of them deserve to be there, maybe, yeah, but, they're draconian sentences. They want the man years. So this guy who's supposedly a stand-up guy, he turns in everybody in his life that he ever did something illegal with names, phone numbers, dates, times, everything. Turned it over to the feds, and they let him out. As soon as they got more man years, which they got almost immediately, they started. Anyway, I was caught up in that net. They came in, and at the time, of course, what did I know really about, search warrants? Right away we realized it was this guy, Tim Butler, who's probably, he probably didn't last very long out there in the free world after they let him out, once the story got out that he was, had turned in everybody, which included some, heavy duty people. Not me, but, anyway, I got caught up in that net. They come in, the warrant, as it transpired, and we found out way later, they had nothing on me under the name that I was living under. I had developed new papers, completely new set of everything, including passport and everything. I can tell you how I did it too, but I don't know if you can still do it that way. But it's, sounds like I'm a criminal, doesn't it? Anyway, maybe not. I believed in what I was doing, and it was, for a good cause, just to promote pot and make some money, not bad. Anyway, I got caught up in that net, and the next thing I know, I'm there. Well, I'll get into that next session, because we're right at 30 minutes.
30 minutes already?
Yeah.
Oh, wow.
Huh. Well,
all right.
Hey.
Well, we're going to leave you on a cliffhanger, and
Right.
we'll see you next time. Remember, like and subscribe. Thanks, Courtney.
Thank you, Heidi.
All right, on.
Yay.
Thanks, guys. Have a good
Bye.
day.